expect a child to just get up and start running a marathon, right?
Right.
It's the same with language learning. You need to take those baby steps. You need to stumble. You need to fall, get back up again. And with each of those steps, you're building strength and coordination.
All right. Hey, everybody, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know, we love to just get right into the heart of it, and today's no different. We're going to be looking at learning English, and specifically how we can just make it a little bit easier on ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, how can we really kind of optimize that learning process?
Yeah.
And actually, have fun with it too,
Yeah.
right? Like, because who wants to just dread studying all the time?
Right.
And so we're going to be looking at this awesome source called Your English Journey Begins. I think the title itself kind of says it all. And before we jump in, if you're already finding this interesting, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on more awesome deep dives like this one.
Absolutely.
So, okay, when we think about learning English, a lot of us, we get kind of like intimidated. It's like such a big task. It's such a huge goal. And the source really kind of breaks it down in this awesome way. They talk about it being like a child learning to walk.
Yeah, that's a really great analogy.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a fantastic analogy because it really highlights, we wouldn't expect a child to just get up and start running a marathon, right?
Right.
It's the same with language learning. You need to take those baby steps. You need to stumble. You need to fall, get back up again. And with each of those steps, you're building strength and coordination.
Yeah, it's so true. And we forget that sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Like we think that we need to be fluent like yesterday. And it's like, no,
No. Right.
you got to build up to that.
Exactly.
What are some of the ways that like we can practically apply this, baby step approach to our language learning? I know, like there's so many programs out there and they all promise fluency in like weeks or months.
Yeah. And it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the different methods and promises out there.
Yeah.
But I think one of the key things to remember is that it really boils down to habit formation. If you think about how we learned our first language, it wasn't through grammar rules and textbooks.
No.
It was all about absorbing small chunks.
Oh, that's interesting.
A word here, a phrase there. Yeah.
And over time, those small pieces built up to a complete picture.
It's like building blocks almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that feels so much more manageable, I think. Like when you think about it that way. Instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have to learn 1,000 vocabulary words today.
Right.
If you're just like, okay, I'm just going to learn 2 new words.
Absolutely.
And maybe try and use them in a sentence.
That's a great start.
Yeah.
And it prevents that feeling of cognitive overload, which is something that we talk about a lot in the field of learning science. And cognitive overload is that feeling of just being completely swamped with information, and our brains simply don't work well under those conditions.
Totally.
So by breaking things down into smaller, more manageable pieces, we're actually able to learn more effectively.
That makes so much sense. And you know what I was thinking about is the source actually gives some really practical examples of these bite-sized actions that we can take. So instead of saying, oh, I'm going to study for an hour today, which, let's be honest, most of us probably don't have the time for.
It's like, okay, maybe I'm just going to listen to one English song today and try to pick out a couple words that I understand or I don't understand, or read one page of a book, or, just have a short conversation in English with somebody. Those are all very achievable.
Absolutely. And those small things add up over time.
Yeah.
And speaking of adding up over time, I think it's also important to emphasize consistency. Even if you can only dedicate 10 minutes a day, if you do it consistently every single day, that's going to lead to much more progress than trying to cram an hour of study in once a week.
It's so true. It's about building that habit and making it a part of your routine rather than this big event that you have to psych yourself up for.
It's like building a muscle.
Yes.
You wouldn't go to the gym once a month and expect to see huge gains.
Right.
It's the same with language learning.
You know what? Speaking of consistency, if you're enjoying this conversation so far and you want to hear more deep dives like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out, and it ensures that you don't miss out on any future episodes.
Definitely.
So one of the things I really loved about this source, too, is they talk about the importance of staying positive and celebrating those wins, no matter how small.
Yes. And that's actually a really important point because it ties into the psychology of learning.
Oh, how so?
Well, when we experience success, no matter how small, our brain releases dopamine, which is a feel-good chemical. And that dopamine actually reinforces the behavior that led to the success. So by celebrating those small wins, you're essentially training your brain to want to learn more.
That's so cool.
Right. So it's like a positive feedback loop.
I love that.
You know, the more you celebrate those wins, the more motivated you become.
And it's like a little reward too, right?
Exactly.
It's like, okay, I did this thing. I'm going to celebrate it, even if it's just like, giving yourself a little high five.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just taking a moment to acknowledge your progress.
Yeah.
And appreciate how far you've come.
That's awesome. And I think it's like important too to kind of remember why we're learning English in the first place. Like, what are our goals?
Absolutely.
Right. What are the exciting possibilities that are going to open up for us when we're able to communicate more confidently in English?
That's a great point, because sometimes we can get so bogged down in the day-to-day grind of learning that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
So it's important to remind ourselves why we're doing this in the first place. Maybe it's to travel the world.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to connect with people from different cultures. Maybe it's to advance in your career.
Right.
Whatever it is, keep those goals in mind and let them fuel your journey.
I love that. So I think like the big takeaway here is that it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress and celebrating those wins along the way. And we can do that by taking those small, consistent steps, focusing on building those habits and just like staying positive throughout the journey.
Yeah, I completely agree. And remember, it's a journey, not a destination.
Yes.
So enjoy the process.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so that just about wraps up our deep dive for today. Hopefully you guys found this super insightful and encouraging. And, if you did, we would love it if you would hit that like button and subscribe to the channel.
Absolutely.
We're always putting out more awesome content like this, and we don't want you to miss out.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes.
So tell us in the comments below, what's one small action inspired by today's discussion that you can take today to move forward on your English journey?
What's that one little baby step you can take?
Exactly.
Okay, we would love to hear from you guys. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.
And keep celebrating those wins.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.